This podcast is made possible by your support and your donations. Thank you. And by the purchase of my book called Everyday Buddhism, Real-Life Buddhist Teachings and Practices for Real Change. I will post an affiliate link to the book on Amazon in the show notes. And if you've already read it, please take a minute to rate and review. And also consider purchasing it again for a friend or family member as a gift. Also, as you probably already know, I have a Substack where I post reflections and also host a spin-off podcast, Words from My Teachers, featuring readings from the books written by and about my teachers from the Bright Dawn Center of Oneness Buddhism and the Kabose Dharma Legacy. The lineage from which the Bright Dawn teachings derived is unique in the Dharma sphere, and its teachings are what I built my podcast and virtual Sangha approach on. As a special incentive to listeners of this Everyday Buddhism podcast, I'm offering a special promo code for a subscription to my Substack posts and the Words from My Teachers podcast. Just click on the link in the show notes by March 31st, 2024. That's March 31st, 2024, to receive 20% off the subscription for 1 year. Now, back to the episode. Welcome to Everyday Buddhism, making every day better by applying the proven tools found in Buddhist concepts. Welcome to episode 105 of the Everyday Buddhism Making Everyday Better podcast. In this episode, I talk with Rebecca Lee about her new book, Illumination, a guide to the Buddhist method of no method. Rebecca and I had a conversation in May of 2021 about her previous book, Allow Joy into Our Hearts, Chan Practice in Uncertain Times. Rebecca is a meditation and Dharma teacher in the lineage of Chan Master Sheng Yen and founder and guiding teacher of Chan Dharma Community, a Chan Buddhist practice and study community made up of individuals committed to cultivating wisdom and compassion for the benefit of all beings. Rebecca has 2 decades of Dharma and meditation teaching experience, leading retreats or teaching at Buddhist centers in North America, Europe, and Asia. She has been featured in several Buddhist publications, including Tricycle, Lion's Roar, and Buddhadharma. Rebecca is also one of the founding board members of the Gen X Buddhist Teachers Sangha, where she continues to serve as a board member. Rebecca is a sociology professor and lives with her husband in New Jersey. I will put a link to her website, where you can find talks, guided meditations, and a calendar of events. I will also put a link to her book in the show notes. Rebecca was encouraged by her students to write her previous book, Allow Joy into Our Hearts, as a response to the suffering of the pandemic and all the fear and mistrust that came with it. That book was particularly helpful for me during those times, and now even, since COVID-19 is still very much with us, and I am one of the many immunocompromised individuals who needs to be much more risk-aware and averse than the bulk of the population. In Allow Joy into Our Hearts, Rebecca wrote about Chan practice, and she continues to teach the path of Chan Buddhism in this new book, which we will discuss today, Illumination. In Illumination, she dives deeper into the Chan meditation of silent illumination, and deeper still into what causes our suffering, and how silent illumination can help us identify and decrease the causes of our suffering. In her book, Rebecca takes us on a fascinating deep dive into the method of no method in silent illumination, and guides us in the mechanics of this type of practice. In our conversation, we talked about, among other things, how in our meditation we turn thoughts into enemies rather than allowing thoughts and feelings to be fully experienced and felt. Also, about how we tend to try to achieve as meditators, as if a competitive sport. And about the modes of operation: craving, aversion, trance, problem solving, intellectualizing, quietism, and forgetting emptiness. I know this conversation will be helpful to meditators and non meditators alike, and I hope you'll continue to listen to this conversation with Rebecca, which starts now. Rebecca, thank you so much for joining me again. This is your second guest appearance on the podcast, and I'm thrilled to have you.
Thank you. It's lovely being here again. It's an honor.
No, the honor's mine, actually. I shared your bio in the introduction of this podcast, and I actually shared your bio in the introduction of the last podcast episode we did. But just to get everybody engaged in who you are, if you could say a little more again about what drew you to the Dharma, and particularly what drew you to Chan Buddhism, because especially in our culture, that's a little peripheral to some of the more popular Buddhist schools. Like, people know about Zen and people know about Tibetan, and I was particularly struck by something in your book that you wrote, and I don't think this came up in your earlier book about Chan history, and you explained that in China, Chan didn't develop as a separate form of Buddhism like Zen, right? How like Zen developed within Buddhism and then became its own thing, right? And but it came as a component of Buddhism entirely, or in toto, but with it grew and evolved in Pure Land temples. And that really struck me because primarily as a Jodo Shinshu practitioner, which is a Pure Land practice, it really struck me. And it also kind of explained why I find your teachings and the practice you describe, how should I say, so comfortable. So can you give me more about your history into the Dharma, into Chan, and whatever else you want to say about that?
Thank you. That's a big question. I will kind of try to remember to address different components of it. Yes, the part of the book you were referring to was that kind of quite brief history about Chan, and what you were pointing to was sort of like in China, Chan Buddhism, Chan evolved like in the five in the around the 6th century, and it, I I'm not an expert in Buddhist history or religious study at all, and I learned all this from my own Master Sheng Yen, emphasizing the sort of the it had to do with the way Buddhism evolved in China and in its particular cultural environment, you can say. Many people are probably familiar with the fact that prior to uh, Buddhism spreading to China, they had already had Taoist practice. And so similar to where everywhere Buddhism goes, it's sort of assimilated into the local culture because the primary purpose is for everyone to benefit from the teaching and the practice, rather than insisting on it having to be in a certain form or certain language and things like that. So it assimilated into Chinese society at that time, like by kind of borrowing language terminology from Taoism, and also a number of other things were being uh, sort of change to adapt to that society. And but it also has to do with how Chinese culture view religion in general. So like people didn't tend to think that like, are you a Taoist or are you a Buddhist? It's
Yeah.
like it's like that's why it's not uncommon for you to be in a temple and there will be like if it's a Buddhist temple, there might be Taoist deities there. And people were not very picky or particular about this is not a pity. Why is it here? Like if folks like it, like find it comforting for them to have also this Taoist deity in this temple, no problem. Like everyone's welcome here. And so as a result, it also developed. Chinese Buddhism is not very into like dividing themselves into different sects. So yes, there is Pure Land Buddhism, the Chan Buddhism,
Yeah.
and but uh, in especially like a man master talked about how um, in after Song Dynasty, when many people thought that Chan had kind of declined and like it just sort of like slowly disappeared, which wasn't really the case from his own research. It sort of like changed form, and in up to the kind of more like closer to the early modern era, the primary way that Chan Buddhism sort of you can say existed in China was in these kind of big monasteries where both Pure Land practice and Chan
Yeah.
practice are
Yeah.
housed under the same roof,
Yeah.
rather than like this is a Chan monastery, that is a Pure Land. So the same thing that's happening in the organization right now that was founded by Master Sheng Yen of Dharma Mountain. Um, in the West, we identify Master Sheng Yen as a Chan master, but actually, if you go visit the Dharma Mountain in Taiwan, you will see that Pure Land practice also very um, active in the center and among the practitioners in the organization. And often he was talk about how like both like practicing both Pure Land and Chan, and or it's already been established. For example, one of the most influential an important Chan master in the 20th century, Master Xu, Empty Cloud, you might have heard of him. He, the method used to stabilize the mind is the practice of reciting the Buddha's name. So, and also he advocated the Huatou, the method, the Chan method of investigating the mind by penetrating the mind by asking a question. And what's the question? Who's reciting the Buddha's name? So
Yeah.
like like looking into the self, into the mind. So you can see that they're not in opposition. They're not completely separate. They complement and support each other. And it shows up institutionally as well that Pure Land practitioners and Chan practitioners practice under the same roof. And so, and that I guess like that, this can help me segue into the first part of your question. How did I come to Chan? Um, uh, First, the short answer to that is like I did not look around, shop around different kind of Buddhism, and then you know what? Like I find like my favorite is Chan. It didn't happen like that. In like I'm one of those people that like sort of the Dharma just showed up in my life, and so like you'd ask me to kind of tell folks about like how I came to the Dharma, you know and thinking back, I can tell you the moment where I was in my room when I was in grad school. I still remember I was reading this book by Eric Fromm. uh, I think the title is Escape from Freedom. Like so it's and it was the time when like things are going well in my life. I was doing well in graduate school, and just sort of like I was somehow kind of feeling I'm looking for something. I didn't even know really that I was looking for anything in particular, but I felt I like maybe I need to make a change. I need to do something differently. Um, so, and one thing in that book caught my eyes. He was talking about how people, like he was talking about how people escape from freedom, right? And then he was saying how like, and people sometimes they do it by reading a lot. And I'm like, that caught my attention because I was an
That's you.
academic. And so like, it's
Yeah.
like, like, and you were always taught like, like it's good to love to read. And then he's like, but it can be a way for you to be escaping from yourself. And then I think, in the following paragraph or something, he mentioned something like meditation. That was the first time I heard about meditation. See, now that everyone heard of meditation,
Yeah, right,
back
right, right.
then it was like there was not internet yet. So like I didn't even you couldn't even go Google like what was that all about. It's not like we had internet but not Google yet. And so just gotta have that in my mind. Okay, there's this meditation thing. I didn't know what it was, and then I encounter someone, who's now my husband. But like back then, he was the first person who told me that he practiced meditation. And then I asked him, "Would you teach me how to meditate?" And then he showed me, and then I started meditating like on my own, twice a day, an hour each time.
Wow.
And then and he was also practicing with a small group led by someone who practiced with Master Sheng Yen. And then he would keep telling me about Master Sheng Yen, Master Sheng Yen. I never heard of Master Sheng Yen. I didn't know any Buddhists at that time, but like eventually, I got some books in published in Chinese by Master Sheng Yen, and got to know his teaching, and I kind of feel kind of the affinity with him. And I also started like joining the meditation group. And another very interesting, I still remember that moment, was the very first day I joined that group. Someone in that group just returned from attending a 7-day intensive retreat in New York. We were in California, so this guy went all the way
Wow.
to New York too. And then he talked about that experience, and I had no idea what's a retreat, but I just remember thinking, I want to go to a retreat. And so and it took a while for me to actually get accepted because they had very few slots. And I talked about in the very beginning of my book about how, my experience, my first retreat, how I felt this connection with Master Sheng Yen. And so like, it felt like I I have met him like a long time ago, or
Sure.
so. I never thought I needed like to look for some anywhere. So it's like I said, it's not because I look at Zen. I look at, like it's
You're
like,
right.
oh, I like Chan. Like that's my favorite. It's like that
Yeah.
the Dharma showed up, and I connected with this teacher, or maybe reconnected with this teacher, and I benefited from his teaching from the beginning. So yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, it's like I've expressed sometimes that is like sometimes the Dharma finds you. I've had a lot of
Mm-hmm.
teachers say that. It's like you don't necessarily find the Dharma finds you. I think you're right in sort of contrasting the time of when that
Mm-hmm.
happened in our culture. It's like everybody knows about it now, and like they're like, oh, mindfulness and shall I study stoicism or shall I study Buddhism? And do you know what I mean? It's like
Yeah.
it's absolutely everywhere. And yeah, and actually, when I came to Buddhism, I was lugging books home from the college library, my local college library,
Mm-hmm.
because there really was no internet, not no Google, but no internet at all. And it's
Yeah.
like I found Buddhism, um through the local sangha, through a local sangha. There was a Zen center. Well, the Rochester Zen Center is one of the most famous Zen centers. Philip
Yes.
Kaplow around
Mm-hmm.
just up the street here, and
Mm.
right in the backyard to it was a Tibetan temple. Ah,
Oh.
and was turned off by Zen practice and went through the backyard garden and ended up parking at the Tibetan Center and studied Tibetan Buddhism for decades before
Mm,
I found or Jodo Shinsu and Zen. Actually, my teacher is a combination of Zen and Shin, a mix. So Japanese Mahayana,
mhm,
kind of
mhm,
broadly. It's sort of
mm.
like, if you think
Yes,
about the Chinese, it wasn't like one exclusively or over the
yes.
other. It was more
Mhm,
about, why are we doing this?
mhm,
Why are we doing this? Not what are we, but why are we doing this? And then
mhm,
that they found me. I wasn't looking for them, but when I realized that Tibetan Buddhism, it wasn't working for me, and I felt like a failure, and and then I found this, and it
mhm.
worked so good. So
Wonderful.
yeah, so many similarities. When you hear people's stories, I always hear those similarities. Not so much today, like I said, because it's too much out there. Um, People shop it, people shop it kind of like they shop at the grocery store. So to your book, um, a line from the book that is was pivotal to me, and I believe is you said the practice of silent illumination is as much of a way of being as a meditation method. Um, and a little later, you wrote something that's similar. Uh, Life does not get in the way; it is the way. Um, both of those lines obviously are cousins, partners to this, and it is about being a way of life rather than being a method. Even though it is a method, it's like your book. It's the method of no method, right? It's really about being in life. And I was struck by these two things for a couple reasons. One, obviously, as you know, the name of my podcast is Everyday Buddhism. So it's the name of my book, it's the name of my sangha, it's the name of everything that we were taught in my in our ministry class. It's about, how can you bring it into your life? If you're not bringing it into your life, you might as well not do this thing, right? um and that's very much what Shin Buddhism is about too. I think it's because it's about, although some people think of Shin Buddhism as like a ripoff of like Western Christianity. And we're talking about the Pure Land as a heaven and this and that. It's less about that and much more about bringing that into your life, bringing that sense of illumination, a sense of listening is big in Shin Buddhism. And even though that is not something you call out, that is what the illumination part is. I think the listening
Mhm,
to yourself, what's going on in
mhm,
here. Um, and I also think hearing that life does not get in the way, it is the way, and it's not so much of a method but a way of being, that really speaks right at the accomplishment driven character of the West, right? The sense of grabbing the goal of enlightenment or some other um benefit, or what's the payoff of doing this, what am I going to get if I do this meditation. um so I know I said a lot here, but can you say more to that?
Yeah, thank you for sharing your thought on sort of what really resonated with you. And I think those two lines address, like you said, what a lot of practitioners have encountered. One most common thing is uh, people equating the practice with sitting meditation, and like believing that, like when they say, that practice is not going well, they're saying that the sitting meditation is, not meeting the expectation. Another way that, that a common complaint by practitioners, that they said they don't have enough time to practice.
Right.
That they, of course, this is indicative of this idea that practice is only about the time that they were doing sitting meditation away from their usual daily activities. And oftentimes, when they feel this way, when they share this complaint, underlying it, and sometimes they actually voice it explicitly, is that their life is in the way of their practice.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
yeah,
Yeah.
so like their work is, too much work, or their family members, placing too many demands on them. And it's actually breeding, oftentimes without their knowing, this aversion
Yeah.
to to their own life. And this is really important to recognize that we have this mindset, um, because when we go into a practice like sitting meditation, and as you mentioned in your question, it is very ingrained in our culture. We bring our existing habitual tendencies into our practice, and also the way we think about ourselves, the way we think about the world, all kinds of beliefs and assumptions, we bring them into our meditation practice. And so when practitioners approach meditation as a kind of sport, where they need to achieve something, and it basically reflects the existing way of thinking, right? So when they realize that they are really trying to get better, uh, maybe being competitive, wanting to be the
Right.
the best meditator in the room. It's not uncommon in retreats that I will mention that, and again, I see people nodding. Oh yeah, I'm trying to be the best meditator in the room, like being competitive or wanting to do well to gain approval from, oftentimes from teachers. Like, do you see that I am like being a good meditator? And then
Yeah.
being worried about like feeling guilty, feeling bad about not doing well, like the fear of disappointing other people when they are not performing, when they're not doing well, and getting stressed out about not doing a good job, not meditating well when they are just somehow like not meeting their own expectation. All these things show up in their sitting meditation, and that is very good, because you're seeing all these ways in which you get into your own way of being with the present moment as it is. And that's what I was talking about in my book, is like this is the illumination of
Right.
like when we believe, like oftentimes practitioners believe that sitting meditation, it's about sitting there like, with no thoughts, and then like that's successful meditation. And of course, like they do all kind of things, as I mentioned in my book, like trying to chase away the thought, turn them into your enemies and things like that. And that too is an insight into your mind, if you recognize what it is that you're doing with meditation, that we have a tendency um, to see what's in the present moment as our enemy, as our obstacle, rather than recognizing that it is part of the present moment, and work with it. And so that is that is how this practice of silent illumination is really a way of
Yeah.
being with ourselves fully as we are in this moment. And when we recognize it, then we'll see that like the practice is every moment that we can, when, yes, maybe sitting meditation provides a space for us to settle the mind, that might help us be a little bit more clear about all these habitual reactivities. And also, for many people, the time we set aside for doing sitting meditation will it's like a time for them to remember the method, remember how to practice, and stay connected with the practice. But that is by no means all of the practice.
Right.
This way of being fully present with ourselves as we are, body, mind, in this space, moment after moment, is how we are naturally as we are fully reconnecting with our humanity, our full humanness, living our life. And so we can do it in some meditation. We can do it while we're cooking our meals and cleaning out
Right.
our house and going into meetings. And every moment, recognizing it's a brand new moment and recognizing how our very entrenched habitual reactivity to what's going on in the present moment shows up. Maybe aversion, maybe our some kind of conditioning. And then it gives us the opportunity to see how that show up very clearly. And when we recognize it is not helpful, it we can choose to not follow and act out that habits so that we don't cause harm to ourselves, cause harm to other people. And so the part about bringing the practice into our daily life um, is is the core of the practice.
Yeah, yeah, you said that so well. I mean, you described it so well. Clearly, you're a teacher who knows what's going on in the minds of students, probably because you know what's going on in your mind, right? That's
Yeah,
that's
yes, we have to practice so that we can
yeah,
uh,
right.
empathize with the student.
Well, no, you said it so well because that's the kind of questions you get about meditation all the time. It's
Mm-hmm.
like,
Yes.
I can't stop my thoughts, I'm anxious. I'm more anxious when I meditate than when I'm not meditating and
Mm-hmm.
everything. And that's only because you're making a little space to actually see what's actually going on all the time anyway. You just didn't notice it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
Exactly. Yeah.
well, you detail about the two words, silent illumination. There's a lot of mystery there, but to some people, they probably think it's not a mystery at all, meaning that they just assume silent means silent and illumination means illumination and whatever. But you analyze the words using a different Chinese translation for a way into a deeper meaning. Um, emphasizing how maybe what people think silent illumination is on first blush isn't really the way it is. You wrote that silent illumination can be translated in Chinese as serene clarity. And you point out that serene doesn't imply no sound or as in silent, right? Um,
Mm-hmm.
but more like tranquil and unagitated. And then you talk about that as a letting be. And you wrote about it as a practice of allowing your thoughts. And I like that a lot because I always think that pr- practice can go so much better if we're curious. Because curiosity gives us a sense of allowing. I mean, if we're curious, we're not saying, "Oh, no, 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 I don't want to know." You know what I mean? We're
Mm-hmm.
curious about it. So you say allowing thoughts, and then you explain illumination is not being separate from the silent or tranquil part, which that's the enabling us to see things as they really are, see life as it really is. And this sounds to me, and so some of my listeners probably know about shamatha or calm abiding meditation, and some know about vipassana or insight meditation. So this sounds very much like an integration of calm abiding and insight. Um, can you talk more about the mechanics of this letting be and then how that illuminates?
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for asking that. And yes, a lot of practitioners who practice, who in the insight practice, can recognize the practice of silent illumination readily, and um, and of course they are. It's all part of the Buddhist practice, and in the practice of silent illumination, as I mentioned in the book, they are not. It's they cultivate simultaneously,
Right.
rather than thinking about that. Like I will cultivate one, like for example, shamatha first, and then not worry about not worry about the insight, and then
Yeah.
I will like uh, 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 whereas in silent illumination they're simultaneous. What's the mechanic of it? So it has to do with, of course, silent illumination is the method of no method, and for folks who uh, start with like a very scattered and agitated mind, they do need to start with a method. Right. So the method that I often introduce in my retreats is the method of using the changing sensations of the body, breathing naturally, to gently anchor the mind
Hmm.
to each emerging present moment, and that facilitates sort of the connection, the unification between body and mind,
Yeah.
while we like gently settle the mind, allowing it to be like less scattered and less agitated. And so this sort of naturally allows the mind to settle. And when the mind like settles, we can transition into the method of no method, allowing the present moment to be. Now, it's easy to say, hard to do, right? Because we
Right.
are
Right.
we are so habituated to reacting to what's going
Yeah.
on, and this is particularly challenging for practitioners who have invested a lot into um, calming their mind using a method by holding on to the method very tightly,
Yeah.
especially for practitioners who believe their job is to hold on to the method so very tightly to basically not allow thoughts to show up, not
Right.
allow anything to like quote unquote disturb them, um, believing that that is the goal. And so I find that practitioners who have practiced very diligently in that way for a long time will find the transition into silent illumination, the method, no method, particularly challenging.
Right.
And but you know that just knowing that is the case often helps practitioner make the transition, and that's
Yeah.
why I named that and talked about that process explicitly, how it is not easy and what are the pitfalls. But like the mechanics of silent illumination being cultivated simultaneously is that like as the mind settles, um, then you're able to see the entrenched habits of reacting to what happens. So, for
Right.
example, if you're very invested in trying to block out thoughts because you believe like there should be no thoughts, like of course
Right.
there are many things going on, like the desire, the craving for the mind to be in a certain state, the state of like not having any thoughts, which you believe is what you're supposed to get,
Right.
and then at the same time, the other side of the coin is um, aversion to thoughts. Like you see you have this entrenched habit of like seeing thoughts as your enemy, your obstacle,
Right.
when actually thoughts are just thoughts. They come in, they leave. It's part of the present moment, which is exactly what happens in life. Like we we have the tendency to develop in our mind that certain things should not be in the present moment, But if they are part of the present moment. And we create our suffering by telling ourselves this should not be here in the present moment, rather
Yeah.
than seeing clearly that what is actually in the present moment and work with it. And so that we can respond skillfully. But like when we practice this way, when we can cultivate this as the mind become a little bit more settled, naturally there's a little bit more clarity. When we can see this reactivity, then they allow us to not perpetuate this reactivity. We may see that the mind is about to react or it has already reacted, but next moment we can choose not to perpetuate this agitated reactivity. Then that is the silence or serenity, in the sense that it's like the non-reactivity. Silence is that does not mean blocking out all thought. It means there's thought, no problem. You don't need to react to it with your entrenched habits. And that is possible because we have this clarity of the very subtle and entrenched habits of reactivity that is very often supported by maybe some kind of misconception about practice, our worldview, our belief, our assumption that we have developed through our over our lifetime, and they're very entrenched, very powerful. They show up, and we believe it, and we act on it right away. But it does not mean that we can't actually see them as a chain of thought, thought after thought. And it is indeed possible as the mind becomes less reactive, silence. At the same time, there is more clarity. This clarity allows us to see these habitual reactivity as really chain of thought, so that we can release these habitual thought chains um, by
Yeah.
just stopping to perpetuate it. That's why they are simultaneous. It's not like I don't need to wait until there's no thought in my mind to have insight. They are happening at the same time every moment.
Yeah, I love that thought chain concept, because that's really how it works, it's like, um, y- y- you know, when you do have insight and like you said, when there's enough space happening in meditation, because that's meditation allows that space so that you could observe the thought chain, you can actually see how, oh, when I have this thought, and if I grasp onto it, or when I push it away, or whatever I do with it, depending on how I feel about it, whether I feel I want more or I want it to get out of here, um, it because it's a habit, it always leads to this other thought, right? But most of us aren't aware of that linkage. That's why it's a
Mm-hmm.
chain. Most of us aren't aware of that linkage between this thought leads to that thought. So I just love that, and that was awesome. Um, and that's and there's another thing that's brilliant, and you shared this from your teachers, and it's about this process, but it's a little mantra that I've actually adopted as one of mine now. It's let through, let be, let go. I
Mm-hmm.
absolutely love that. I think that um there's a lot of what this has been said in a lot of different ways, like you know, and now all of a sudden I'm blanking on his name. One of the Zen Roshis said, watch the thoughts come and go, leave the front door open, leave the back door open, watch them come and watch them go, but just don't invite them for tea, right? I think, oh yeah, Shunryu Suzuki, I think, said that. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and it's similar to that, but it's so simple, it's so everyday. Let through, let be, let go. It does explain this process beautifully, right?
Yeah, and I think it's helpful to keep in mind as a mantra, but
Yeah.
it's also really quite important to understand like what each of them involves. So letting through sounds easy, but oftentimes practitioners get stuck right there because they are so habituated to blocking out the thoughts. And like I said earlier, especially practitioners who have invested a lot of the energy into cultivating a mind with no thoughts,
Right.
or they believe they have made a lot of progress in that direction, meditating that way, then it involves quite a bit of unlearning, unlearning a lot of the habits or strategy they have created to quote unquote succeed in meditation.
Right.
Earlier, I talked about like some people think of meditation as like a project or a sport that they are like devoting time
Yes.
to get really good at. Like they like sitting on the cushion like they are training for a marathon or to go to climb Mount Everest, because it's
Exactly.
normal, it's natural for us to bring our existing like weight of like the drive and the motivation and having to go and having to achieve it. But of course, for many practitioners, the most what frustrating them most is like that their usual tools and ways don't work for this practice. And the process of practice is to discover that like what they have discovered in succeeding in life, very useful tools, but maybe also understanding that like in some part of it maybe also getting in the way. And so and that is the wonderful thing about Chan practice, to recognize that, oh, okay, like yes, I can be very motivated, but maybe um releasing the component that get in the way, such as the idea of how this moment is supposed to be, and just really give it my best every moment, moment after moment. And so like a letting through, you like just being able to let through, allow whatever happens, thoughts, emotions, stories, memory to come through. um it's like a really important part of the practice. So and but like some people, a lot of people kind of just skip through the let be. It's like, okay, let be, and then let go. And they are in a hurry to let go. And then
Ah,
oftentimes they are in a hurry to like make it go away because again, they are still attached to the notion of what I'm doing here is to cultivate a mind with nothing going on. So
right.
like they begrudgingly let through. It's like, okay, Rebecca, you said let, okay, I'm letting this through, but like just for a little moment, and then I'm gonna make it go away. But actually, like that is another way we get in the way of ourselves. So letting through, just watching how hard it is for you to like let through is very illuminating, to see how much resistance you have cultivated to the natural flow of the present moment. But also like letting, that's why there is let through, let be. What is the letting be? Letting be is like it's very common for practitioners to understand like letting be as like, okay, I'm just like seer, like okay, they're thought, go, you just go. And like being detached from what's going on. That is not the practice of silent illumination.
Right.
Letting be here really means to be with whatever happens fully. That's why I always say that like that means allowing the thought and feeling to be fully felt and seen and heard as they are moment after moment. Really, it's about reconnecting with yourself as you are fully, moment after moment. And that is crucial. Otherwise, if you go about the letting be by just like becoming like an observer,
Yeah.
or like keeping your thoughts and feelings at arm's length, then that you're not fully engaged with yourself, truly reconnecting with yourself. Because then it is only by allowing yourself to be fully experienced that you can realize for yourself how truly every moment is brand new. Like the how thoughts are like really empty and impermanent. They're not concept. You actually experience it directly. And actually you the letting go will be easy. Like you see that how of course, it's ready to move on and you just let it move on. There's no need for you to do anything to push them to go away. And to be able to learn to do that and see how truly we get in the way of ourselves we by through these entrenched habitual reactivity at every step of the way in multiple ways, and by recognizing all these unhelpful habits, that we can also see how they show up so that we can unlearn them, release them, and we can become more and more fully uh, connected with ourselves. And so that's why it's not just a mantra. It's helpful to remember that
Yeah.
that is what we do moment to moment in our practice, in silent illumination in our life.
And the letting be is, I liked your way of, obviously your explanation of letting through and letting go was obvious, not obvious, but was deep the way you presented it. The letting be, the twist on that was very important. I think it's subtle, but very important. It's like the difference between that passivity of letting be, oh, I'll just let it be, does not involve the engagement with it. Like if I let it be, I have to let it be with me, right? I have to engage with it to fully live it out before I can like push it away and let it go. So I really liked how you explained that. And it actually reminded me of the stay with that just as that. Um
Mm-hmm.
that was another one of your phrases, or is stay with that just as that. You if something shows up in your moment by moment awareness, like you said, in life or in meditation, um it's very easy to dismiss it, chase it away, grab onto it. But if you just stay with it as it, right, or stay with that as that, or stay with it as it, it's a whole different experience, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what it means by being fully present. And that's why like you're very perceptive in seeing the importance of the twist of letting be, because a lot of people say, oh yeah, just let it be, like be at peace and just
Yeah,
and is no, like, and oftentimes they translate it into a life and just like let let people do whatever, and then sometimes
yeah,
use like let people take advantage of you, and then they were like, whoa, no. It's like, no, that's not what it's saying. That's not what
right,
it's saying. It's cultivating this moment to moment clarity
right,
of what is going on, so that you can see truly what is happening, instead of through the lens of your assumptions, preconceived notions, that create all kind of distortions. Because when we don't see what's actually happening clearly, then we are likely to um, respond in a way that is not entirely appropriate, suitable.
right,
So like when we often talk about like skillful means, like the
right.
skillfulness comes from being able to see uh, the entirety of the present moment as it is, rather
Yeah,
than being filtered by our preconceived notions.
right, right. Um, you know, now. I probably shouldn't have saved this for near the end of our conversation because it may be the most important set of teachings in your book. Um, and that is what causes our suffering. You hinted at this about our reactivity and our incorrect, labeling of things. But this is sort of the meat behind the second noble truth. And you used the word that your teacher used, vexations. You know, that word sounds like a spell to me. and actually, it is sort of a spell or curse we put on ourselves, isn't it? I typically refer to the vexations by the Sanskrit kleshas because I studied so long in the Tibetan tradition. And one of my teachers used to say, oh, I was having a klesha attack, which I always liked. It's like it comes up out of nowhere and it takes you away. But it takes you away because of the habit of thought, the habit of reactivity. But back to the point. So the word vexations is spot on because I know the word, but I decided to look it up in the dictionary. And the dictionary definition is both something that causes annoyance and the state of mind that results from being annoyed. Now, that's so Buddhist, isn't it? The
Mm-hmm.
combining both of the annoyance and the state of mind, with the state of mind having equal or more weight than the actual thing out there that's the annoyance, the thing that's happening. And it's straight from the dictionary. But in your book, you teach it like this. So, as a formula, you say the present moment plus vexation equals suffering. But you go much deeper into the habits of mind that cause our suffering. The last whole half of the book, I don't know if it's completely the half of the book, but it's dedicated to the type of mental habits that get us into our disturbed states, having our klesha attacks. You call them modes of operation, and you detail the seven in individual chapters. You talk about how they show up, how we can become aware of them, how they cause suffering, how meditation can help us discover our own, personal strength of modes. So I know we don't have time to go into detail about all of these since I left this for the end, unfortunately. So can we consider this a tease or incentive to buy the book? But can you give a brief sentence or two about each?
Sure. Yes. Well, the modes of operation, actually, I have alluded to that earlier in our conversation here,
Right,
that oftentimes when practitioners felt that they are not doing very well in their meditation, or things are not go the practice is not going as well as they are supposed to, and they think something's wrong. And actually, that is the perfect opportunity to gain insight into themselves.
right,
And because the way they are perceiving what's going on, they're reacting, how what they are doing in the meditation reflects their entrenched habitual tendency, or what I call the modes of operation, because it is not something we do only in our meditation. We are bringing the way we live our life
right,
into our meditation. That's why we have our, we call it, we have our mode of operations, and then we bring them into our meditation. And so when we recognize these modes of operation showing up in our meditation, then we actually, it helps us gain insight into how we have been doing that in our life. And
right.
then actually, when we gain that clarity, we can see, oh, okay, like now now you also know, not only do you know what it is that you're doing, you also know how to unlearn those habits. So
Uh-huh.
like a craving mode that I talked about first has to do with the our very entrenched habits of craving, wanting what we find to be pleasant,
Right,
to be repeated, to want more of it, instead of seeing that every moment's the coming together of causes and conditions. So, for example, when we have sitting meditation practice, where we have a very nice, enjoyable meditation, and that is oftentimes because the body and mind relax, like your situation in your life is nice, and you are able to use the method that in that session, and so they all come together to give you that meditative experience. But the common habit is like, I want all my meditation to be
To be
like
like
this.
that. Right.
And it's not uncommon actually for practitioners to spend every meditation session from then on repeating, trying to recreate that. And of course, because precisely they are doing that, they're not in the present moment as it is, then it's just suffering rather than um,
Yeah.
being able to engage in the practice of being in the present moment. And so it's pointing out how the habits of like trying to freeze an experience that we find pleasant into a fixed entity and believe we can hold on to it and and want more of it. How they get in the way of ourselves. I guess a lot of people can recognize how that
Yes.
show up in their life as well. And the version mode uh, is the subtitle of that is making thoughts our enemies. I think many meditation practitioners can recognize it. Oftentimes, this has to do with the belief that the goal of meditation is to make the mind a certain way, especially to create a mind with no thoughts. And so turning what shows up in their mind into the enemy. And so it's related to and it can show up in people's life, uh, in people's life, like identifying, believing that their life is supposed to be a particular way. They create this idea, and
Right.
then and of course, every moment is brand new, and every moment is coming together of causes and conditions, and and when they see that there's certain thing that shows up in the present moment in their life that does not fit the expectation, they react with aversion, like turning them, like see them as enemy to they need to get rid of them. And of
Yeah.
course, it's not it's a lot of suffering. And I want to say a little bit more about this mode because not only is it very common, because like I had mentioned a number of times, that a lot of meditation practitioners believe that is what they are supposed to do is to create a mind with no thought, and they that lead them to turn thoughts into enemy.
Enemy. Yeah.
Um, what they're doing is also perpetuating the habit of aversion. And
Uh-huh.
so like in meditation, a lot of people believe that they are, like they are doing meditation to find some peace, find some calmness. But what they are inadvertently cultivating is hatred. They are moment to moment
Wow.
cultivating this hatred towards thoughts that show up in their mind, and
Mm.
believing that everything that is in the way of getting to that calm, serene, peaceful state is their enemy. They want to get rid of them. And so we really need to watch out for this mode of operation, because if we are not careful, we can inadvertently be cultivating a more hateful mind than a
Yeah.
peaceful mind.
Yeah.
Um, so a trans mode, another very common mode of operation, is also related to um, a common misconception about what meditation is about.
Yeah.
A lot of people believe that meditation is about creating, cultivating a particular state of mind, and some some kind of trance that they're supposed to enter, where they feel like very peaceful, nothing happening, because they hear the word peace associated with meditation. They believe that that's what they are supposed to be experiencing in meditation, and we are very good at our minds can be very clever. So when we like got the order that like I'm supposed to create the states, we create the states, and kind of like I call that like a foggy mind. We create
Yeah.
fogginess in our mind so that we don't really we don't experience anything that's going on. It doesn't mean that they're not going on, but they're just like behind a layer of fog that we have deliberately created in our mind
Yeah.
without our knowing. So we are very foggy about what we're doing in creating our foggy mind. And I when oftentimes when I mention this, I will have like most people in a retreat telling me that in shock that they have been, that's what they have been doing for years. And, and and it's often like a reflection of how people have been operating in their life, because it's not uncommon for folks who are attracted to meditation, because they thought it's a place where they can be away from the difficulties and challenges in their life situation.
Yeah,
So like
kind of
a
like a escape. Yeah.
yeah, so they that if you engage in this trance mode in your meditation, chances are you are also engaging in this mode of operation in your life, trying to like avoid a hideaway from what's difficult in your life, and it's helpful to see that to see clearly that that's what you're doing, and so that you know what you need to do, which is different from hiding without knowing that you are hiding. Like you can know that clearly that you are hiding, and
Right.
it's very different. And so the problem solving mode has to do with like like you mentioned earlier, in our society, besides being a very consumerist culture, like we are very much praised for being a good, strong problem solver. So if your identity is very much built on being a good problem solver, or that's your role in your life, maybe in your family, in your work, that can be a very strong habit. And then you bring that into um, other aspects of your life and turn everything into a problem for you to solve. And so that the habits can show up in your meditation as well. Like like when their thought, it's a problem. How do I how do I solve this problem of having thoughts?
Yeah.
And so when you see that kind of thought habits, like this is a problem, that's a problem, and then that means your chances are you are doing it to everything in your life, including most problematically that turning other people in your life into problems. Um,
Yeah.
they are people. They are not problems. Also, turning yourself into a problem. I often tell practitioners that you're not a problem. Like you are you. So, like that's a common, also very common. And the intellectualizing mode had also very common, particularly popular, but not restricted to practitioners who who have done a lot of reading in the
Yeah.
Dharma, and and uh, and they will bring, but you don't need to either. It's also a habit, whether you have read a lot of Dharma or not. It is the habit of like using concepts to
Yeah.
substitute direct experience of the present moment.
Right.
So rather than the beginner's mind, this curiosity that we bring to each brand new moment, there is this habit of like you already know through all these concepts, this knowledge. So instead of being with the present moment as it is, with all its complexity and nuances, we we give it a name, give it a label,
Yeah.
maybe also add on a little bit of your theorizing. I already know, rather than directly experiencing what's going on. And also, often that is what how we do, how we are in our life, using our intellectual knowledge to just sort of kind of um, paper over the present moment situation instead of allowing ourselves to be fully engaged with, you can say, the messiness of life, and
Right.
kind of like be a bit, and so we end up being a bit um, distance,
Yeah.
disengaged
Yeah.
from others. And we do that without our knowing. We believe, we are with it because, but we are doing it through our concept. Quietism mode is a very common mode, especially with very dedicated meditation practitioners, because they really uh, they they often have an opportunity to get into these very still mind states,
Hmm.
and misbelieving that's it, that's where they're supposed to be. And
Right.
so they in this and of course is often related to this idea that your practice is about getting to a place where nothing's going on in your mind.
Hmm.
That's the prize that you are going
Right.
for.
Right. The
And
goal.
so like it's the combination of these this misconception, that can get one stuck in quietism, like what Master Sheng Yen talk about a lot, this dark cave, the believing that this mind, this space where like nothing's going on is where you want to be. It's like also a form of attachment, attaching to a particular state of mind, and
Right.
it is and and it's very difficult for people to get out of this cave. So it's best not to go there. But
Yeah.
like recognizing that you're going there by noticing these sort of like misconception about a practice is particularly important. And this kind of mode also would often show up in people, how people live their life, like to kind of just really disengage from building a thick wall between themselves and the world to try to create this quiet space, this dark cave that they can be away from everyone, to protect that stillness, that they think is it. That is quite common, and so of course that is the opposite of being fully engaged in life. And the forgetting emptiness mode is like I said, like it's forgetting uh, that every moment is brand new. So when we experience something in our meditation, um, it's that you it's these kind of practitioners will see like, oh, that's it, I got it. Like what is the it that you got? And but it doesn't keep people from believing they got it. And and that's like that moment they have fallen into the habits of believing that like certain moments can be it can they fall into the habit of turning a moment into a fixed entity, and
Uh-huh.
believing that that's something that they can hold on to, forgetting emptiness. And so it is not an uncommon one for practitioner. And of course, like it shows them in their life, like this is it. I got somewhere. And also the belief that like all I need to do is to get this, then I will be happy.
Yeah.
I will be set. So this kind revealing that this kind of subtle but quite pervasive thought habits that can get in the way of our being fully with each moment, uh, as it is. Body mind in this space, every moment being brand new. So that is so. Of course, this is not an exhaustive list. These are
No, no,
uh,
no.
the popular ones that I have seen dedicated practitioners run into. Yeah.
And it's absolutely wonderful in that it's about everyday life too. It's like if you become aware of this stuff going on in your meditation, then it's obviously how you're doing life, and vice versa. You bring it to your meditation as well. So it was a great list, and it is it's sort of like psychological states or something as well too. I think it's excellent. Um So, yeah, I've took a lot of your time today, Rebecca. Thank you for running through the modes of operation or these ways that we create vexations for ourselves. Um, I'll put a link to your book and to your website in the show notes. Is there anything else you'd like to mention that we didn't talk about, or anything else you'd like to mention about something that's coming up with you in a teaching or workshop or anything?
Well, I definitely want to mention one last thing is
Sure.
that, like, for a lot of practitioners, when they realize that they have these modes of operation, they start hating their mode of operation. And then there's, of course, a very entrenched habit of aversion.
Version.
And it's quite important to remember that when you can see this mode of operation, that's wonderful. That means that you are cultivating clarity of what's going on in your mind. And that gives us the opportunity to unlearn and release these habits. So, whatever happens, it's good practice.
It's
And
right.
that's really important to keep that in mind. Otherwise, sometimes when we learn about these things and then we can become, we have the habit of beating ourselves up
Yeah.
and getting discouraged. Like, watch out for the common response of like hating our habits. Like, actually, where the more we can recognize this kind of different kind of mode of operation, that means we are practicing well, actually.
Yes, it is. If you identified it, you had good practice, and that's excellent.
Hmm.
That is
Yeah.
absolutely right. So
Hmm.
so thank you, Rebecca. I mean, another awesome book. I can't recommend it enough. I showed Rebecca at the beginning of our recording how many little post-its and things I had. It's just a wonderful book, and it reminded me of your previous book, and that I came away remembering a lot of lines. So thanks again for offering it to me and to my listeners and to everybody out there. May it benefit everybody. Thank you so much, Rebecca.
Thank you so much for having me.
That's it for this episode. I hope you enjoyed the conversation with Rebecca and will check out her book, Illumination, A Guide to the Buddhist Method of No Method. Next up, as usual, some announcements. The first announcement is the next Introduction to Buddhism course begins Thursday, February 22nd, 2024 at 7:30 p.m. U.S. Eastern Time, virtual via Zoom. The course is a real-life approach to living the Noble Eightfold Path based on the course text, Everyday Buddhism, Real-Life Teachings and Practices for Real Change by me, Wendy Shinyo Halet. The course is free to Everyday Buddhism Community and Everyday Sangha members. If you are not a community or Sangha member and don't wish to join either, the suggested donation is $25. The course runs 9 weeks from Thursday, February 22nd through Thursday, April 18th, 2024. We will need a donation or request for scholarship to ensure your registration. If you join the membership community or Everyday Sangha, you can cancel your participation in those and the intro course at any time. No one will be turned away for lack of funds. If you are unable to donate or join at the member or Sangha level, please contact me at Wendy Shinyo. Please contact me at Wendy Shinyo at everyday-buddhism.com. There is a link to the details and to register for the course in the show notes. Next, we just began a new study of The Way of the Bodhisattva by Shantideva this past Saturday, February 10th, in the Everyday Sangha. As you know, the Sangha is a private, donation-supported group that meets virtually via Zoom every other week on Saturday mornings at 10 a.m. U.S. Eastern Time. Our meetings consist of a service first, including traditional vow recitations and other invocations like refuge, bodhisattva vows, etc., and chanting and a short meditation period. The service introduces a more ritualistic or liturgical approach into the structure of our meeting much like you would find at a non-virtual Buddhist temple, church, or sangha. It includes a Dharma talk by one of the practice leaders or myself, and possibly a Dharma glimpse by one of our sangha members. After the service, we open it up to discussion of the current book study or of anything that was inspired by one of the Dharma talks. Please consider joining the Sangha at this time to be a part of the new study and practice and part of a warm and welcoming Sangha community. You can learn more about the Sangha by viewing the bonus YouTube podcast where myself, Bradley Janayo Sensei, and Terry Zenkai Hoskin, our practice leaders, talk about what the Sangha and what everyday Buddhism is all about. You can also support this podcast and the other activities of Everyday Buddhism by becoming a community member for $5 a month. If you do, you will have access to all members-only podcasts, an education series, the Introduction to Buddhism course, the Buddhist Book Club, and a private group on a non-Facebook platform. If you don't follow me or Everyday Buddhism on any social media platforms we post in, you can go to the Everyday Buddhism website and join the membership community or the Everyday Sangha or register for the Introduction to Buddhism course. Go to www.everyday-buddhism.com and click on either the tab that says Join Members Community or Join Everyday Sangha or Register for the Introduction to Buddhism course, or you can join through Patreon at patreon.com/everydaybuddhism. Links to joining the Everyday Sangha, membership community, intro course, whatever, are posted in the show notes. I thank all of you who contribute. This podcast, the community, and Sangha depend solely on your donations to continue to exist. I do not seek sponsors for the podcast, and I don't ask for financial commitments through a paid podcast membership. So the work I do and the cost needed to support what I do is entirely self-funded, except for your donations. Please consider a one-time or continuing donation through Patreon or on my website's Donate tab. Or if you just want to buy me a coffee, click on the coffee cup link on the website. You can also find all the links in the show notes. And thanks to all of you who write in with comments and questions. As the latest bonus member podcast illustrates, I read your emails and may even pick your question to feature in a bonus podcast. Another way you can help is to rate and review the podcast on your favorite podcast platform. It's important to share the podcast with others if you find it helpful in your life. And if you could, take a minute to comment so people will know why you love Everyday Buddhism. That's it for the announcements. Whew. So until next time, keep finding ways to make yours and everyone's days better.